So, good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday. Pretty cool, it's Wednesday. So anyways, yeah, I figure I would still give you an update of what's going on because you have to know how the progression of taking on a disease after dealing with something that was dying and taking on that disease that was causing it to pass away and all the demons that are along with that. Demons are distress. Demons are also things that are developed in reaction to something that the body doesn't want to deal with. And so the fornication, the offspring become then the new entity. And they're not always friendly. They can also be very destructive. And that's also when the body is in major decline for whatever reason, the destructive, what you call it, the natural killer T cells then come into play. And if they're not controlled, they will go and destroy everything in its path. And so in a lot of ways, I was exposed to NK T cells, natural killer T cells, that were attacking my dog's body, and then the microbes were attacking me. And then I developed a very temporary condition that if I had a closed system, it would have been a long-term condition. But since I have an open system and I developed a strategy to open up my system without using aggressive elements, I only experienced that condition for a very short amount of time. And it also triggered my reproductive system to then also release the demons from my uterus, because that's also where the demons can also, what do you mean demons? The NK T cells, lymphocytes, antibodies, your immune system's defense systems will also reside in your uterus, because that's how immunity gets passed on from mother to child, if that was the intention. And so that's why my period then triggered right after my experience with that exposure to those microbes. And so, yeah, this last couple days, usually I would have my period for about maybe 2 or 3 days, but what's today? It started on Monday or Sunday? No, Monday. And then right now we're on Wednesday. I felt the cramps actually early on, but then I felt another set of cramps last night. That's another push release process. But also too, yesterday I felt like my eye go kind of crazy, as if like you know how you get the eye twitches? And I remember getting eye twitches many years back in like the early 2000s when I worked at a company, because I was looking at a computer screen for such a long time in really bright lights. And maybe I was stressed too, who knows? And drinking lots of coffee, espresso. So I would get all these eye twitches. And it would happen, periodically, sporadically over the last 40-something years. But it was aggressive eye twitching yesterday, just like a real brief moment. And I could feel even like the muscle in my eye kind of like bend a little bit. And then it was gone. It was just gone. And so there was the eye twitching, and then it was the cramps, and that was pretty much it. And I was fatigued yesterday, but that was about it. So it was another round of the body pushing stuff out. And you see that my face is very clear. Usually when I get some kind of period menses, I would break out probably like a week or so, 2 weeks, like with my PMDD, I would break out in different places. And that would say that there is a hormonal imbalance in different parts of the body. So, I gotta blow my nose. Hold on a second. So my whole body is working the way it's supposed to. My liver is working great. My kidneys are working great. My appetite is fine. And given with all the things that are going on in Ohio with the train derailments, you'd think that they're saying the water supply is fine. I would assume it's true. But you really have to open up your system so that way you aren't going to be so sensitive to the environment. And so that's why today I figured I'd just speak about the liver, because it's very relevant to what's going on today with with all the excessive chemicals that are being put out there because of infrastructure falling apart. And infrastructure is going to keep falling apart. We're going to have controlled burns. We're going through a major renovation to our society, whether it's like construction and they're demolishing, like demolition projects, controlled burns, train derailments, chemical exposure. This is the time. And also COVID, okay, and people's microbes. Now you know that when people are dealing with excessive growth because of climate change, they're going to be releasing their demons. My dog was releasing demons. I caught my dog's demons. I mean, this is actually proof that you can catch things from other people. And people have said, oh yeah, you're shedding from whatever, whether it's from a recent therapy or that your body is just releasing and you have different microbes, different demons, different diseases that your body is releasing because of climate change, and people have to release. They can't keep everything inside or they will be over capacity. And so that they're releasing and people catch stuff. That's why they said wear a mask. Okay, that was the reasoning behind the whole mask stuff. So, there's a method behind all the madness that people are bitching about. But if you don't understand and if you don't isolate certain incidences, like with my dog, no one else would be in the position that I was in with my dog because they were not taking care of my dog when I was taking care of her. So they wouldn't understand, they wouldn't see the proof, right, that you can catch stuff from your animal. You can catch stuff from your husband if you want, or your wife, not if you want, but if they were releasing so many microbes that were natural killer T cells, that were some aggressive disease. But if you've already been with your husband or your wife for a while and you've already assimilated and your body already figured out how to deal with the energy and the microbes, and so most likely, unless their body then starts releasing excessively, then that's a different story. But then each person has to have a strong immune system. And so your liver is everything. Your liver is what filters things out and is what also catches stuff and keeps it in. And that's why people get liver cancers. They get lymphomas. They get hepatitis A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Okay, I mean, all the different diseases of the different organs is from those who have a closed system. That's why you must open your system. When you open your system, you can take in information and also release the excessive information. And what do I mean by information? Elements, microbes, Hydra. Doesn't matter what it is. Information is information. It can come into a form of a letter. It could be words. It could be a message. It could be a protein holding information. Okay, and a protein could be microscopic. You may not even see the protein, but it holds so much information, just like nanotechnology. When you have a very small, little, tiny micro disc that can take pictures as if it was like a big camera, which they're using in the medical system to take pictures of things inside your body, like the movie Inner Space with Rick Moranis. Okay, so that's the thing, is that your body should be able to take in information and release the excessive information. But people have closed their systems because they're using organ stimulants, they're using prescription drugs to vasosuppress their the exit points and the entrance points, or if it's suppressing so much or constricting so much, then use vasodilators. They vasodilate their arteries and capillaries and openings and closings. And so, yeah, when you're taking drugs and you're taking herbs and you're taking different therapies to vasodilate and vasosuppress your body, then you're not giving your body the opportunity to develop its own intelligence. You're taking everything under the sun, and then you're becoming addicted to the different detoxes, herbal remedies, even the J juice, because you don't want to develop your own muscles inside and also use your digits organically. You're using the J juice that will then eventually cure those microbes that you're trying to release inside the body. And that's also why those who use J juice so much aren't evolving. They're still, not only are they in pain still, but they have trapped the distress inside the body. And so that's why I don't see too much of evolution in a lot of people in the J world, because they have trapped so much crap inside. And so, yeah, you got to feel the release process. That's the most necessary in this world right now. We're in climate change, and when someone's over capacity, they could be aging excessively. I already see it out there in the population. People have trapped the stuff inside their body, and they're over capacity, and so what are those little microbes doing? They're eating away at the person's body, mind, and spirit. They're eating away at their soul, and you see the life force disappear out of the person, as well as someone who may be extremely robust, so robust that then when you're trapping the aggressive elements, and it could be even someone else's microbes inside the body, and it metastasizes, then the liver has to overwork, and then the liver stops working, and then this is where people run the risk of all the different diseases that are out there. And so I'm telling you, I feel worlds better right now. I feel worlds better. I mean, I already said that yesterday or the day before. I feel amazing, but yesterday I did get another wave of a cramp that was just it was 7 o'clock last night, and I tell you, I don't know if it was a frequency or if it's just another bout that my body had to go through to push out more of the demons out of my uterus. But I'll tell you, it was pretty crazy, and it also affected one of my eyes. Not my eyesight, but just the muscles, the twitching. And I do hear a lot of sirens too in the last couple of days, but I haven't really heard too much of the energy frequency in my ear because my body's going through that purge process. And so it's pretty cool to see your body in action especially during the wind. The wind was pretty crazy. That's why I felt so tired yesterday too, because there was a bunch of wind. And today we're going through some storms, in the US, and it's going to be like in the 20s, and then tomorrow it's going to be like in the 70s. Okay? Or even Friday. And so we're going through some major particle acceleration, and it's going to, mess with people exponentially because their body has to keep readjusting. And so, yeah, the bigger you are, the more that you poop, awesome. The sicker you are, the more you poop, awesome. And given that, I'm glad that my husband's pooping a lot more. I know you don't want me to say this, but he's pooping a lot more. That's good. I'm so happy that he is, because he needs to release demons too, because, he's a big dude and I don't want him to be over capacity. But during this climate change, the more you're pooping and the bigger you are, the better off you're going to be. And the smaller you are, you better be putting on some kind of weight, because the smaller you are in this climate change, the more your body's going to be cannibalizing itself. And you won't eat, and if you are staying away from food, you won't take on enough substance to be able to deal with the energy conversion. My dog was extremely underweight, and if I knew what I knew about feeding her, the pureed food maybe even a year ago when she was going through all those different seizures, I might be in a different place today. But it's hard to say. Hindsight's 20/20. You can kind of be like, well, should I have done this? Should I have done that? I know the medical system and the veterinary system was not the answer, but if I could do it over again way back 2 years ago, I would have given her, a bunch of milk and meat pureed after every single seizure. But you can't go back and change anything. So you just have to look back and be like, well, okay, for future reference. Okay. But that's the thing, is that anyone that's underweight right now in this crazy ass climate change, you literally have to realize that you need everything in the food supply. You need everything in the food supply. You cannot afford to be discriminatory. And those even who are extremely overweight in so many different ways, not only do you have to release, but you still have to eat all different foods in the food supply as well, because you can't starve yourself, because you still have vital organs that you must protect and give substance to. And even though the body can convert and potentially even take different cells and stuff and maybe help pad the vital organs and help reinforce them, you still got to feed your body, because the body will have to release a bunch of the toxins that are on someone who is extremely obese. And if they don't have that energy force like food, then yeah, it is cannibalizing itself, and you don't know what it's being cannibalized. It could be your brain, it could be so many things. And so starving yourself on any front, on any level, in any capacity is not opportune, not in this environment. Fasting is not even recommended, in my opinion. Fasting is not recommended in my opinion. And so, you need all food in the food supply. But you're like, oh my God, what about all the chemicals? Hello, you live in a world of chemicals. Water is a chemical. Okay? Your air is a chemical. So the thing with the fear of chemicals is part of the depopulation agenda that was infused purposely in the holistic world. Because we already knew people were going to be disenchanted with the allopathic world. So then where do they go? The holistic world, who then will sell you the same thing packaged differently. Because again, it's organ stimulation. No different than taking a type of drug that will vasodilate your arteries and capillaries and your blood vessels. So taking an herb that is meant for a certain thing is the same thing as vasodilating some part of your body that you are not satisfied with or want a certain reaction from. And so, yeah, I'm telling you, there is nothing poison in the food supply. If it's FDA approved for consumption, you freaking eat it, because you live in a world of different types of microbes, proteins, and chemicals, and your body has to reflect that. And so when you can get what's out in your environment in the way that your body can consume it through the food supply, you are better off, because you will assimilate to the changing conditions much better than someone else who is eating organic and also is overcapacity, underweight, or extremely morbidly obese. And so, I'm telling you, it's going to be a process for those who haven't conditioned themselves to adapt to climate change. And it's not just, cold and flu season in September or the spring allergies. Now you're getting the spring allergies and cold and flu season almost every freaking weekend, because the erratic, aggressive fluctuations in the temperatures and in the weather is like experiencing winter and spring in 1 week. Summer and spring in 1 week. When I was thinking about putting on my AC in the middle of February the other day when it was 66, almost 70 degrees, that ought to tell you how aggressive and how erratic the temperature swings are, and that will affect the climate inside your body. See, climate change isn't just like, okay, a few storms and a little global warming here, a little global warming there, and global cooling over here, and ice sheets over here, and all that. No, it's also the chemical exposures that changes the climate in the environment, yes, and also in your body. Okay, so climate change is like covers everything that changes from some kind of event. I don't care what it is, whether it's a particle acceleration or a train derailment. That's climate change. See, you have to understand that not everything is compartmentalized in one little context. Climate change isn't always weather related. It also is chemical related as far as your infrastructure. When there's demolition going on, when there's construction, that's climate change. When you're walking by a bunch of weeds, that's climate change to them, because you have now pushed the energy and you've walked on weeds, and you've developed energy to then cause you to be, to move through that specific area. Okay, so climate change can be at the micro level, and climate change can be at the macro level. And then you have to know how to deal with that climate change. And again, it's not always the weather. It's chemical exposure, and it's also just, the infrastructure changing in your community. And so, yeah, we have controlled burns over here in Ohio. And we also have demolition projects, because they are revamping our downtown. We're going to turn into a smart city. Eventually, we will have high-speed rails, and it will connect the different human habitation zone. And there will be areas of which it will be off limits for people to go through, because biodiversity. They're going to want to save the planet, which means that your movements are going to be, you're going to be watched, and they're going to be limited, and people are not liking that. But sorry, but we're in now a whole different world called sustainability, because we lived in a disposable society for such a long time. And disposable society means that people were just buying stupid shit, and they're letting it sit in their house and then go and try to sell it here and try to sell it there, or it just gets stuck somewhere, or people are hoarding so many things. Okay, so that's the disposable world, where we keep reproducing people who just have to have shit, and that shit just stays there, and then it causes major pollution and also waste. Fraud, waste, and abuse, right? So now we're heading towards a more sustainable economy, electricity, not so much of the fossil fuels burning and all that. And so that will then cover everything in the way you do things. And it's going to be a systematic change, and the change is going to be forced upon you because people don't want to change. So what do? You have to find different ways to do it. Well, you're seeing it right now. You're watching it right now. Change is being forced upon you. And so you have to adapt to it. You can't be fearful of it. You say, open your system, lose your desire for so much shit, or it's discarded over the streets of, yeah, very true, Audrey. But lose your desire to collect bullshit, to collect junk. Like, when you think about it, I only buy food and then what was necessary to keep my dog alive at the time. But now it's only buying food. That's really what I am spending my money on. I don't buy baubles. I don't buy anything that I really don't need. Now, my husband, since he works, he needs to have some kind of outlet. So his whole bass boat and all that stuff, okay, fine, that's his thing. And I'm not going to stop him if he can afford his bass fishing stuff. I'm not going to get away with that because that's what keeps him happy. That's great. But in reality, what I buy is I buy food, because you never know when the climate shifts and then you become hungrier. You better have enough food to deal with that hunger and also to release if there was something aggressive. Okay? Because I wouldn't know if I was ever exposed to any kind of chemical or vinyl chloride. I wouldn't know. There's no way for me to know. And even if I did go test my water and people boil the water and they see the chemicals come up, okay. But again, remember, you have an immune system, you have a liver, and if you already are overcapacity with so much disease within, it's going to trigger no matter what. It wouldn't be just the chemicals that would trigger it. It could be a shift in the climate again. It could be someone's microbes that woke up the demons inside. So if you already hold disease within and weaknesses within, and you're already overcapacity, it's not going to matter what's going to trigger it. You're going to have to deal with it regardless. And so a food could trigger your issues. Again, the air, the wind, the climate change, a chemical, your friends and family. When you go to a concert, when you go to a restaurant, people get food poisoning, right? Because they weren't used to a certain type of bacteria that may have been present in their food that they weren't familiar with. And so it's not going to matter what triggers your predisposed issues if you hold them inside. And that's pretty much been my ongoing mantra about everything that people are blaming out there, as far as the V's, the GMO, the air, food, water, chemtrails, all that stuff. If you already hold this shit inside of you, it's going to trigger from something. So you might as well just deal with it. Don't try to hold it back. Don't try to suppress it. Don't try to stop it. You let it release. But people don't want to deal with the release process, and so they trap the demons inside, compound the issue, and then it becomes more aggressive later, and they either age faster or they get some aggressive issue that then they have to use even more aggressive means to stop it, and then people don't survive the therapies. And that's exactly what is going on right now. And so you see that with all this climate change, people are going to be turning to more aggressive means to stop the release process, and it's then going to compound the issue. And then they will be okay for a minute, like, oh yeah, everything's great, I don't feel anything, da da da. And then later on down the road, the climate changes again, the issues compound, the demons reproduce, and their situation's even more dire. And that's the intention. You will be the one to take yourself out of the genetic pool. No one else is going to do it, because you're the one that didn't know how to react to climate change in the proper way. And so there was a reason why the J world, not the J juice so much, but the J world existed in 2016. It gave us enough time to figure some shit out before all this shit happened. Okay? Because I even had to figure out that you couldn't be on diets. You couldn't be discriminatory against food. You couldn't, suppress any more symptoms. And that you had to feel everything if you wanted to survive. And so, yeah, it was a process to learn this, and then realizing that the antibiotics and all the different remedies and painkillers was the fake healing, the facade. Like when you get injured in a car accident and you have holes in your body, and then they sew you up, or they do something, or they do surgery and then they close you up. Then they give you all these painkillers, right? Because your body's trying to release the damaged cells and regenerate, but you don't want to feel that. So you take a painkiller, an antibiotic, Then you get the fake skin, the fake healing. So it might give you a little bit of respite for a certain amount of time. But then later on down the road, you will feel that situation, and it will turn into a type of disease later on, or a cancer. But those damaged cells were stuck in the body. They were never actually dealt with. And so trauma gets trapped in the body when we turn to the holistic and the allopathic. And then we develop more trauma from the surgeries. Okay? But it took 6 years to figure that out. It took me watching my dog go through her processes to figure that out, to see what kind of medical trauma she underwent before me. Okay? And so it took me having to suffer watching my own body go through its own process, and then watching my dog go through her process. And, you know, and I wasn't willing to put her down until I felt that I have exhausted every, you know, opportunity to keep her alive. And so, you know, so she gave a gift to all of you. As much as some people don't want to see that, they think it's like, oh, it's horrible that I tried to save my own animal. She gave a gift to all of you to see what happens when you do go under the knife and then you want to finally become whole again. Yeah, you got to revisit all your crap again. You got to revisit every single trauma again. And so that's what's going on right now in climate change. And so then I switched it over to then the religious part, atonement versus absolution. Like I said before, the holistic allopathic is all about absolution. And when people don't want to deal with absolution, or when people don't want to deal with atonement, they go to absolution. Anyone that's all about atoning for their freaking sins is then labeled satanic. And so that's how I understand now why people label certain religions as satanic, because they're willing to atone for their sins and deal with the ramifications of their transgressions against their body, mind, and spirit. And it can be kind of ugly. It sucks to atone for your sins because it's painful. And people who don't want to feel pain then think it's satanic because they want absolution. They don't want to pay for the sins of what they did against their body. They just want, you know, another fucking cure, another surgery, another therapist to go see. They want another prescription drug. Okay. That's the difference between myself and those that want absolution. I was raised Jewish, yes, and I didn't realize to what extent how that was ingrained in me. That I need to earn my way into this world. I must atone for whatever I've done to myself, my body, mind, and spirit, and I deal with it. I face it. I don't try to go and be absolved of my transgressions. Even though even some of the religions are about atonement, still find absolution in different ways. They're not purely all about atonement. Yes, there is a segment of the Rosicrucians, which is the Jewish mystics, about atonement, but then mixed in with the Rosicrucians is the Christian Gnostics, and that is the absolution. That's the Catholic Church, is absolution. You know, you go and talk to a priest about, you know, what you did, and you go and admit or something, and then they say, okay, well, you are forgiven. You are forgiven. And they do all their stuff, and you're forgiven, and then you're absolved. That's the Catholic Church, is absolution. And then, you know, Jewish mystics is atonement. And then you have the Egyptians and the Greeks and the Romans, and they're all about balancing both absolution and atonement. So that way society can still function. So we're not always just in misery all the time, atoning for all the things that we did to have such an amazing Babylonian society. And so there is that balance between atonement and absolution. But on my end, at this point, I'm about atonement because I can't afford all the absolution that's out there, because it means that you have to actually pay with your life. I don't want to do that. And so I'd rather just cut down my desires, cut down my needs for material things, cut down a lot of things as far as travel and distractions, right? Because when you're always traveling and distracted and in activism, then you're not taking care of yourself. The fact that I've been home for the last 2 years, not only dealing with my dog, but dealing with myself, that was my atonement. I wasn't distracted by parties, travel, you know, any other distractions. I wasn't distracted by remedies and surgeries and all that stuff. No, I had to sit and atone for everything. I did. But when you're always traveling, you're always with people all the time, because you have to be entertained and distracted from all your different things, you're not going to heal, you're not going to atone, you're not going to purge out the demons. If anything, you'll keep them in so you can keep the party going. Well, sorry, the party stopped for me a long time ago. But now I'm finally on the other side of it, and I feel so amazing. But I had to deal with my dog, I had to deal with myself, dealing with my dog, I had to deal with my own predisposed issues and my own past. Okay? And it was the last 2 years where everything came to a head. I got a little bit of relief in the J world using the J juice for the first couple years, 3 years, 16, 17, 18, 19, yeah. 3 years, got a little relief. Okay, put the word out there to the world. Let them just say what they got to say about me. And then the last 2 years, bam. The last 2 years, wow. That's when everything I put together or whatever came to a head. Then I really had to deal with the demons. And they were formidable. And that meant that I had to stay home. A lot. That meant that I didn't go to parties. I didn't go do it. And I didn't do anything. People are like, oh, you can't do that. You can't be home. That's not a life. Well, again, there's two different people. Those who atone for their sins, literally, physically, and those who want absolution. And that's why a lot of people in the different religions don't like me. Because they want absolution for everything, and I'm willing to sit and just face the pain. But you can't tell someone they should do that. That's the thing where I say, if you're in the J world and you actually really want to back up and understand the J world, you can't tell someone they should atone for their sins or give them absolution. It's not for you to determine that for somebody else. You determine that for yourself. So that all I could say is to other people is I hope you survive the transgressions you committed against your body, mind, and spirit. I hope you survive climate change. I hope you survive this new world. And this is how I survived. Doesn't mean it's going to work for you, because I'll tell you, I didn't have a lot of physical. I had, a lot of psychological trauma, yeah, but I didn't have a lot of physical trauma. The psychological trauma, you heard me the last 6 years go through all my psychological trauma. The physical trauma, I could manage. But some of you have a lot of physical trauma, and you're going to have to go through that. And if you also had psychological trauma, well, that's also going to be something on the plate that you have to deal with too. Okay? And so all I can say is this is what I did. I found a way to pull out the distress out of my body, because sometimes distress wants to stay in your body. And that distress could be the demons that were developed even 20 years ago that found a home that doesn't want to leave. You are a great host, right? That's why people have a hard time releasing, because that parasitic negative energy in the body doesn't want to leave. And you've already figured out how you've already used that as your identity. That's why people still own their trauma. And they put it out there on not only on Facebook, but on their own websites. Oh yeah, I've been traumatized. I've had all these things happen to me. And I'm seeing a therapist, and I'm this, and I'm on prescription drugs, and I'm on these strings of antidepressants. They have no problem putting their business out there. So you already know that person has so many demons. And if you don't have as many demons as that person, then there is nothing that they could offer you that would be anything that you'd really want to take as for you, because they're dealing with demons that you don't have. They're coming from that filtered point of view of so many demons. And so if you don't have as many demons, then you won't have anything in common with those who have a lot of demons. And so then you just have to be like, I hope you survive climate change. I hope you survive the trauma that you've endured. I'm sorry that you endured that. But we don't really have any kind of common ground. So good luck to you. And that's it. You just walk away because you don't have anything in common with something like that. And so, so I speak to those that are willing to see if they can handle releasing their demons. I talk to those who are open. And not everyone's going to be, and people try the J world and they couldn't handle it. Or they try to do a Hail Mary. Okay, so not everybody can handle what I'm doing, the atonement side of all of this. Some will be able to handle the atonement side, but not everybody is going to. So then you have to determine how much can you handle as far as atoning for your sins. And that is the pain of release. Cancer, disease, chronic illness, autoimmune disorders, and then your body releasing. And sometimes it's in a rash. Sometimes it's your rashes under your armpits, your lymph nodes opening. Sometimes it's your eczema and your psoriasis and just all the different inflammation. Sometimes it's pain in your head. Sometimes it's you producing mucus. And so, yeah, this morning I produced a lot of mucus, came out perfectly fine, released the demons too, because I was like, after that cramping around 7, and then it was all the farting. And so then you realize why people get period shifts, right? Because your body is releasing not only the blood in your uterus from all the demons that were transferred there at some point during that exposure. So all that blood's coming out, and also then your poop is being released, because that's also part of that process. And so, yeah, you have to realize, for women, we have a lot more release. That's why we have a higher capacity for evolution, because we have a higher pain tolerance. I've never had a baby, but I've had some pretty hard periods the last 2 years. Okay? And those periods were body releasing. The cramping was insane. But it needed to happen. Those are prostaglandins. Those are what people try to stop from working. The prostaglandins are part of the inflammation process, so the body can release those demons. Again, people take painkillers and they take other things to stop the body from releasing, and then guess what? They age exponentially, and they also compound their issues. And so then died suddenlies happen because of that. See, died suddenlies wasn't something that just happened because of what someone did as far as, a therapy. It was already set to go. It just happened that the therapy was the last straw that broke the camel's back. It could have been the wind changing. It could have been a food. When you're in climate change and you're already over capacity and you haven't conditioned your body to deal with the changes of release and regeneration, all that stuff, then yeah, a died suddenly situation would be something that would happen to a lot of people who are not prepared for climate change and are also over capacity. And again, it could be a remedy, it could be a therapy, it could be a surgery, and it could be even going into a concert with high frequencies, extremely high frequencies. So when you already conditioned to deal with high frequencies and climate change and microbe exposure and element exposure, you won't have the fears like those out there that have the fears. I don't have any fear over anything. I mean, I'll tell you, I wouldn't have any fear, because if my town was meant to be obliterated, I wouldn't be here talking about it. That's the thing, is if you're alive, you have every chance to redirect. If you're not alive, it won't matter. It's totally moot if you're dead. So if you're alive, you have a chance to redirect. Some people who are alive are in pain, yes, because the body's trying to release. And so if you're feeling stuff from being exposed to something, if that you can actually prove that that was the cause, you can release that demon. Yeah, it's going to be painful. It's going to trigger everything in your body that's already, compromised. But you can release that demon and you can come back from all of that. But people don't want to do that. They want the shortcuts. They want the remedies. They don't want the exposure. Sorry, you're in an environment, you're in a diverse world that you can't control. So the only thing you can control is the way you react to your environment. When the environment shifts in whatever manner, you have to know how to react to it to save your own life. Not try to save somebody else, because you can't. But you got to save your own life. And you can't stop the system. You can't stop accidents from happening. You can't stop the system from changing the environment. You can't stop infrastructure from changing. You can't stop anything out of your control. The only thing you can do is take care of yourself and potentially even help out your kids if they are open to it. But that's it. That's the extent of your control as far as what's going on. And so it all comes back to the individual. Either you're going to be the one to take yourself out, or you're the one to just ride through it and ride it out and grit your teeth and deal with whatever. Deal with the transgressions. And sometimes things that happen to you were out of your control or was before your time. You inherited your parents' weaknesses. And that's another thing of it. People inherit their parents' situations. And so they don't remember having any kind of trauma, but man, something's going on in that part of the body, and they don't know where it comes from because they never remember everything, but their parents had the trauma or their grandparents had the trauma. And that got passed down from generation, and then you got to deal with it. So there's a way to do it, but you got to change your lifestyle belief systems and also sit through and eat all food in the food supply. All right, that's all I'm saying. I'll just enjoy my day. It's going to be cold. All right, bye.